Okay. So now I'm going to take you through this interesting part of trigonometry where you will be given a statement which says if cos theta is equals to, in this case, 4/5, and where theta is the element of 0 degrees and 90 degrees, calculate without the use of a calculator and with the aid of a diagram the value of tan squared theta. So what matters the most here is for you to note down these important information that you are given. They're saying if cos theta is equals to that fraction of 4/5, and most importantly, theta is the element of 90 degrees, 0 and 90 degrees. No calculator to be used, but you use the diagram in order to find tan squared theta. So I've done a lot of this type of problems until I got to a realization that actually you just need to know out of the 4 quadrants that we spoke about, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4, in which quadrant will the triangle fall? The first part is to try and figure out in which quadrant will the triangle fall. So once you figured that out, then you need to find all the sides. Once you know all the sides, then that's when you can get to that. So those are the steps that you need to follow. So that means step number 1. How am I going to explain this? Let's say step number 1 is to find out the quadrant. And then second step, it is to complete your right angle triangle by knowing all the sides. And lastly, that's when the third step is for you to answer the question. I'll just say answer there. So let's work towards our first step. So this statement alone, it actually tells you to say your angle is actually between 0 and 90 degrees. So this one is a straightforward statement, because if they are saying between 0 and 90 degrees, it forces it to be in the first quadrant. That's what makes it easier. So now that we have used this to find out in which quadrant it falls, now we can get to this part of the statement so that we can see if we can allocate the sides based on that. So remember, cos of an angle being 4/5 should be the ratio of x over r, which means our x value, it is 4, and then our r value, it is 5. So what we now need to do, it is to find the other side. So can you see, we are done with that first step of trying to figure out in which quadrant does that right angle triangle fall. It is this statement that will always guide you in terms of in which it could fall. It will not always be this straightforward. I will show you another way in which it may be given to you. I'm just hoping that I'll get to that, where they will not necessarily straight away say in the first quadrant in that way, but for example, they will say it's either in this quadrant or that quadrant, and then somehow you need to choose. So this was an easier way of them letting you know in which quadrant it falls. So where are we? We are still on the second step where we try to complete the triangle. So by the look of things, it means this is the side that is missing, the y value, or the opposite side. Obviously, theorem of Pythagoras, it will always be our way to go. So now we can easily work it out. This is definitely 5, and then this is definitely 4 that we plus it by that squared. This is 25, this is 16 plus y squared. Take this to the other side. What is 25 minus 16? What will that be? If you take 4, if you take 5, it goes to, so that means it's 9. This is equals to y squared. So you square both sides so that you can remove that. What is 9 squared? Remember, the y value can either be a plus or a minus. So equals to y. So that means our y value is either plus or minus. Maybe let me put it out there as a statement so that you are aware. We say, when it comes to this type of calculations, every time when you calculate your y or x value, you will always find it as a plus or minus. That's when you're calculating the x or the y value. But we said r is always positive. So I'm simply saying, if you get to a situation where now you are calculating the r value, then you have r squared, let's say it's equals to 25. Then you will just root both sides. You'll just say r is equals to, straight away you can just say 5. But for some reason, if it happens that it is actually x that you are looking for, then let's say it's 25 that side, you will always root both sides. But in this case, you will say your x is equals to plus or minus 5. Even if you are calculating the y value, let's say 25 there. So this one, it will always be y equals to plus or minus 5. It's only r which is always positive. I hope you got that part. So that means since we are saying our y value is plus or minus, then we need to choose. How do we choose? We look at the quadrant in which that triangle falls to say, in that quadrant, does the y suit to be positive or negative? Definitely it suits to be positive, because in this quadrant we are having positive y values. But if it was in this quadrant or that quadrant, it would be negative. So that means we say plus or minus, knowingly that the y value, when it comes to this diagram, it can be positive or negative. Even the x value, it could be positive or negative. It's only the r value which is always positive. So can you see, now we have just completed our right angled triangle. So that means we are done with the second step. The last step, we just answer the question, which is a very straightforward thing to do, because remember, we are given tan squared of an angle, which is equals to that. Obviously, we do know very well that this can be written as that. Remember from the previous lesson that we did. Then, what is the ratio for tan? Definitely we know it is y over x. All that we need to do is just to now substitute. What is the y value? It is definitely positive 3. The x value, definitely positive 4. And then just remember that squared. Now we just apply the laws of exponent, where we will have 3 squared over 4 squared, where we end up having 9 over 16. So if possible, then we might need to further simplify this. I'm curious to know if this can be further simplified. Is there a value where a value that goes into 9 and it also goes into that? Probably not. Then this should be the end of it. So can you see, without the use of a calculator, very much important on that one. So maybe very quickly, let's try do another example. This time around, I'll just straight away get into the problem. So the questioning is the same. They just change the values. So this time around, I'm having an example here where they are saying if 13 sine of an angle is equals to, they are saying -5, and they are saying this theta, it is the element of, this time around they are saying 90 degrees and 270 degrees. What they want you to calculate, it is cos of an angle that you plus it with sine of an angle. Statement is the same. I'll just read it out, but I will limit what I've written to that. So they're just saying if 13 sine theta is equals to -5, and theta is the element of 90 degrees and 270 degrees. Calculate without the use of a calculator and with the aid of a diagram the value of cos theta plus sine theta. What did I say? I said you need to work it out in 3 steps. Firstly, find out the quadrant. Secondly, once you know in which right angle triangle falls, then find all the sides. Once you've done that, then you answer the question. That's how you work it out. So where is your starting point? This is what you always use in order to start. So now let's see, we will just say we have that. So that statement, the reason why you have to go to that statement is because it says starting from 90 degrees going all the way up to 270 degrees. So that means your right angle triangle can be in the second quadrant or the third quadrant. That's what that statement tells you. So to be certain regarding exactly where does it fall, then that's when you will go to that statement. How do you do that? You always need to make sure that you have sine theta, cos theta, or tan theta on the left alone. Everything else, take it to the right so that it is a ratio that you'll be able to interpret. So what I mean by that is to say you need to make sure that on the left you have sine of an angle which will be equals to, here you have -5 over 13. You remember previously when I said the negative can belong to 5, it can belong to 13, it can belong to that as a fraction. So that statement becomes important here. But before you can do much, you just need to remember that the ratio for sine, it is actually y over r. So since r is always positive, that means that negative belongs to y. Then that's how you will decide to say, with y being negative, then will it fall in this quadrant or that quadrant? It can't be in this quadrant because in this quadrant we have positive y values, and according to that fraction we have a negative y value. Therefore the right angle triangle will be then. That's where you have your theta there. So that means the y, it is your -5, and then the 13, it is your r. So it is actually x that is missing. How do you find it? Easy, you already know. They say you are having that, and by now you know that you will have a plus or minus value, because we said when you're looking for the x or the y, you have a plus or minus, and I'm pretty much sure that you know what kind of a value you are expecting based on that quadrant. So now let's see what will what is it? So that means we need to punch that 13 squared. It's something that you might need to do in your head, because remember they said do not use a calculator. So you might need to remember that actually 13 squared it's 144, and then you've got that x squared. This one definitely is 25. And then you end up having that, what is it? Is it 144? Wait. Nope, it's not 144, but it's 169. I just remembered now. Did I remember, or did I check it on the memo? And the nice thing is that I'm done with grade. Okay, it is 169. But trust me when I say, even though they said without the use of a calculator, such things I would, silently murder them, just for that one, because you wouldn't know if I used a calculator or not. It's like 5 squared, it's always 25, so you can't prove if a calculator was used or not, but definitely they want you to show all those steps. Okay, so now if you take 25 to the other side to minus this thing, I'm just curious to know, will it not be 144? I think if you take it to the other side, it will definitely be 144. So that means you've got that 144 being equals to x squared. Now you root both sides, then that's when your answer should be plus or minus, definitely 12, and that should be equals to x. Then it becomes a question to say your x value, will it be positive or negative 12? Definitely negative 12, because of the quadrant in which that a right angle triangle is drawn. So that's why you will conclude by saying it is actually in that quadrant, and for that reason it will be negative 12. So now we have done our second step where we completed that. Remember, the question wanted you to calculate what? Cos theta plus sine theta. So now, okay, cos theta plus sine theta will be equals to, this one is x over r, and then this one is y over r. Okay, what is x? We just calculated it as negative 12 over, what is r? R is 13 plus, what is the y value? It's negative 5 over r is 13. So now you need to use your knowledge of what is it? You now need to use your knowledge of the fractions. That's why when we started, I had to take you through the calculations of the fractions, because I knew that at some point you will need that knowledge. So now it's no longer a matter of trigonometry. You just do what you know about having two terms being the fractions, where, if you remember, I said you take that and that, and in this case, because it's a common or the same number, you can just write it there as that, and then you would obviously have to cross multiply, even though in this case when you cross multiply, the 13 will just cancel, and then you end up having that negative 12 and then minus that 5, where you end up having negative 17 over 13 being the end of it. So very much important that you know how to deal with the fractions, because otherwise, if not, then you are going to be in a big trouble. So that's why in case if you are not able to deal with the fractions at this stage, you need to go back to that lesson and watch it again, and then redo some examples until you master it, because at this stage it is trigonometry that I am taking you through, not necessarily the fractions, because I assume that you wouldn't get to this stage without you having mastered that. Okay, maybe very quickly, let me just do some more examples just to show you how you determine the quadrant, because that matters the most. Without you being able to determine the quadrant, everything else will be wrong because you'll be using wrong values. Here I'm having an example where that being the element of 0 and 90 degrees. Again, they would say calculate without the use of a calculator and with the aid of the diagram. In this case, they would want you to calculate cos that minus sine that. Name. This alone already, it tells you that what you are dealing with is actually from 0 degrees to 90 degrees. So it automatically makes it to be the first quadrant. That one is an easy one. And then because of what you are given there, you need to rewrite it nicely. Then it will be sine of an angle being equals to 3 over 5, where we know that the ratio for sine is y over r, which means 5, it is the r value, and then 3, it is the what is it? The y value. Then you will need to find the x value. Once you find the x value, then you need to substitute there according to the ratio, and then you should be done. So let's jump on to number 2 and see what we have there. So that means you can have something like cos of an angle, which should be equals to 12, that is being divided by 13. And then again, they say theta is the element of 180 degrees and 270 degrees. So calculate without the use of a calculator and with the aid of a diagram, and the value of, this time around they just want you to find the value of a 10 theta. Okay, then it's fine. So here 180 and 2, say okay, this one it looks straightforward because from 180 degrees to 270 degrees, this is where it is. So that means it is in that quadrant, where in that quadrant we know that cos, the ratio for cos, what is that? So that means cos of an angle being negative 12 over 13, it is actually x over r. So that means that negative belongs to x, which means it is negative 12. R we know is always positive, and then it is the y value that you need to be looking for. So can you see, theorem of Pythagoras, again, you just need to remember that your y value in the end, it will have to be a plus or minus whatever value, of which in this quadrant the y values are negative. So that means you're going to have a negative y value, and then from there just substitute it out there, then you are done. So that's how you would work it out, and not that much complicated. Let's see. Okay, it looks like okay, maybe let's do number 3. Then when it comes to number 3, you can still be given, let's say 10 cos of an angle. Let's equate it to that, and then let's say this is the element of let's say 0 degrees and 180 degrees. Yes, and they want you to find sine of an angle that is being added to cos of an angle. Same statement. If 10 cos theta equals 6 and theta is the element of 90, not 90, but is the element of 0 degrees and 180 degrees, calculate without the use of a calculator and with the aid of a diagram the value of sine theta plus cos theta. What did I say? The first thing, you always start there to figure out possibly in which quadrant. And when you draw that, 0 degrees to 180 degrees. So that means it's in one of those. It's either is there or it is in there. So how are you going to know exactly? Then you need to now use that. Then you will rewrite it like this, where you just say cos of that will be equals to 6 over 10. And cos is the ratio of x over r. R is always positive. So that means according to this ratio, that 6 is positive. So that means it's in the quadrant where x is positive. This side x are negatives, this side are positive. So that means it is not in there, but it is in there, whereby x is 6 and then r is 10. Then you need to find the y value. Once you find the y value, then you will rewrite this as a ratio, substitute, then simplify. That's how you would work it out. I hope this information does help you to have an idea of what is expected of you. Maybe let's do one or two more, and then I think you should be ready for your quick test. So maybe let's say you have, it can come in many ways. You just need to remember that you follow those 3 simple steps and you're going to definitely enjoy this. So let's say theta there, it is the element of maybe let's say 180 degrees, then let's say 360 degrees, and let's calculate without the use of a calculator tan of an angle. They can still say tan of an angle over 2, maybe they say -1, and they can do whatever they like there because they know you know how to deal with the fractions. So again, 180 and that 180 and that, it should be in one of those quadrants. 180 there and then 360 there. So it's either it is in that quadrant or that quadrant, one of those. So that is the first step regarding that. Then how are you going to know exactly in which quadrant? So we know that the ratio for this is y over r. Wait, let us see. Okay, now I see. This is actually an error from my side. On the statement or on the example that I'm having, they actually said 270 degrees there. So I'm the one who changed it to 180 because I did not want to make it too obvious like they did in the example. So it is necessary for me to cancel that, because if I put it on 180, it suits to be in there or in there, which is not supposed to be like that. It has to perfectly suit to be in one quadrant. So we'll just say 270 and 360 and make it obvious that it will be in there, because that's where we have a negative y value and that positive r value. Then you just need to calculate the x value, of which we are expecting a positive value. Then it ends there. So here, very quickly I'll explain the last one and say if we have caused that. So just be aware that with the previous one that I've done, it will never be a situation where it can suit to be in both quadrants where you just need to choose. Nope, it will just fit perfectly in one quadrant. So for me, I try to, you see, like this one in the example they said from 0 to 90, of which from 0 to 90 it's actually straightforward to say in the first quadrant. So I just added another 90 degrees to make it 180, so that it will be more like a bit trickier to find out in which quadrant, so that I will show you those tactics that you use in order to find out. That's what I did with the previous one, but it didn't work out. But this one, I think it will, because it's either from 0 degrees to 180 degrees. So it's either it is in the first or the second quadrant. That's what that statement tells you. For you to be sure of the quadrant, then you go to that statement and make sure that you have cos angle, tan angle, or sine angle on the left being equals to a ratio. Sometimes, if, for example, you have just tan of angle being equals to 4, just be careful to say you always want it as a ratio. So if it's like this, you know you have invisible 1 there. So if you divide both sides by 1, that 1 cancels with that, and then you have over 1 there. So that means you will always just divide it by 1 in case if it is given to you but it's not a ratio as you would expect, like 2 over 3. But if it's just 4, just know you just say 4 over 1. That means your x value in this case would be 1, y value in this case would be 4. That is how they can trick you in an exam or in a test. So now with this one, we know that our x is that and then our r is that. So that means if our x value is positive there, then it forces it to be in the first quadrant where x values are positive, where that is 25 and x is 7. Then you just need to know what the y value is using theorem of Pythagoras, and obviously your answer will be plus or minus, but you do know very well that you will go with a positive answer because the quadrant in which that right angle triangle fall, you are having positive y values there. So that means what matters the most with this part of trigonometry is for you to be able to deal with the fractions. So after you have worked it out until the end, I'll give you an example to say what I used to do. It was to just say punch that on the calculator just so that I can know what my final answer should be. Then once I get my final answer, then I know what I'm working towards. If I don't work it out to find this, then I know something is wrong. That's how I would use a calculator, because you are given marks based on showing the steps. So that means you need to, in a smart way, be able to verify using a calculator to say, if I punch all of this on the calculator and it gives me that, then it means as I work it out, I'm expecting this as my final answer. If I don't get this as my final answer, then it means something in between is wrong. But because I learned how to deal with the fractions, I never had to worry about punching it on a calculator because I knew the steps. So that's why I'm saying very much important that you know how to follow the correct steps, and with you doing that, you'll be in a good position to be able to get to the final answer. I'm just hoping that all that I've explained, it makes some sense. Remember, in case if there is something that does not make sense, you will definitely need to rewatch this lesson over and over again until it does. Just before you get started with your short test. Okay, I think I will just leave it here and say until we meet again.